Welcome to the Tappin' with Tako podcast. I'm Tako, and my goal here is to help you transition from the military to your civilian career or business. Today, I bring on two guests, Matthew and Shanon, who are both military veterans, entrepreneurs, and have a ton of knowledge to share. We talk about ways to tap into your creative side, tips on setting yourself up when applying to a Skillbridge, and of course, we talk about their platform, Hop On and Hold On. There's a ton of good career advice on this episode, but we also tap into deeper topics like how your identity is not defined by what you did in uniform. If you're interested in learning how to overcome challenges during your entrepreneurial journey, or you're looking to reinvent yourself after getting out of the military, this episode is for you. I hope you're ready to hop on and hold on as I bring you Matthew and Shanon Morris.
In the Subaru with my Nikes on the dash. In the Subaru with my Nikes on the dash. In the Subaru with my Nikes on the dash. Nikes on the dash, Nikes on the dash.
Welcome to the Tappin' with Tako podcast, Shanon and Matthew. We will kick things off by having both of you introduce yourselves. So Shanon, I don't know if you want to start first, and then Matthew, we can have you second, or either or.
You go first.
I'll lead us off. So my name is Matthew Morris. I was born and raised in Texas. When I was in high school, I participated in the United States Naval Sea Cadet Corps. When I graduated high school, I attended Texas A&M University Corps Cadets. I was a PLC Air Scholarship through the Corps of Cadets, and through that gained my commission into the Marine Corps. Was a helicopter pilot, a Comstrat officer, and an OIE planner. I am currently in the process of going through a medical separations board. I have a ton of information on that. If anyone sees that as they're up and coming, it's also a big part of why Shanon and I are putting Hop On and Hold On together to help people with their transitions, because regardless of the fact that so many people go through the transition process, everybody's is different, and everybody can benefit or learn from what we have gone through and are currently going through.
Cool. And I am Shanon Morris. It's kind of funny saying that since we've been married for 3 months. Used to be Shanon Lavin. I was an officer in the United States Navy. I was a surface warfare officer until I was in a car crash that pretty much ended my career in the Navy. The entire time I was in the Navy, I wanted to be an intel officer, so I was doing everything possible to just go in that career trajectory. So when I got out, I had about a 30-day notice and moved up to DC, was a cyber intelligence analyst with the FBI. Realized that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. So then moved into management consulting and eventually led veteran hiring programs at Google. And now I am embarking on the life of being an entrepreneur with my husband.
Awesome. Thank you for the intros, both of you. So let's kick things off. The way that I found you, I think, was through LinkedIn, and y'all were talking about Hop On and Hold On. Can you talk about like what was your inspiration to kick things off and really start along this journey?
Okay, so when I met Shanon, like the very beginning, our first date, I immediately knew that she was a different caliber of human being, not just a different caliber of woman, but the way she communicated, the way that she presented herself, and more than anything, the way that she thought. I, on the other hand, was kind of a cocky smartass, and I was in the impression that I was the only person who moved at 100 miles a minute in life, and kind of in that cockiness. At one point, I told her, "Hey, if you want to be with me, you're just going to have to hop on and hold on." Well, it wasn't too long after Shanon and I started seeing each other regularly that I realized not only had I met my match, but I had met the person who was going to help me relight the flame of my creativity that had been put out for so long. And that is exactly what Hop On and Hold On exists to do. Our mission is to inspire people to think creatively, to think outside of the box as you go through your respective life's transition, whether it be military, job, family, a move. It doesn't matter. Hop on and hold on is there to encourage you to think about it in an outside of the box way.
And can you tell us a little bit more about if people want to know more about this and want to like figure out what they want to do for the next steps for the transition? What kind of information can you share with us there?
Yeah, so we just started. A lot of the actual blog posts that we're sharing now kind of kicked off with me being laid off by Google. And so Matthew and I looked at each other and we were like, well, oh my gosh, you're going through a transition. I'm going through a transition. We have a wealth of knowledge. What can we do to share it? So we started off in just sharing our story because it's everything everywhere all at once, all at the same time. And it's pretty overwhelming, but we figured we're not the only ones going through it. So we figured if we can share a little bit of our story and show that, hey, what you're seeing on Instagram and on social media is not necessarily the full reality, that we can help inspire people to really think outside the box. And one of the key things that we just started going down was just the path of creativity. So I looked up a few different resources for veterans and for military families to really hone in their creativity. Like there are veteran service organizations out there that are geared towards that, to either express yourself, express your art, or go into media and entertainment. So we're starting to share some of those resources. And as we go along and figure things out for ourselves, we're going to share as much as we can, because there's no centralized place for this. And especially for some of the out of the box thinking that we're really encouraging people to do, that doesn't exist. So whatever we can find, we want to share broad and wide with the veteran and military family community.
That's awesome. I really want to dive into that real quick, just because, in the military, everything is very structured. It's very black and white, and you're venturing off into this creative side of things. What kind of interesting things have you found or researched that have really stood out to you as far as this creative side of what you've seen?
You want to go? You want me to
Go ahead.
I think a lot of it for us has been trial and error. So it's not necessarily the veteran service organizations themselves, but like what interesting, weird, wacky thing kind of just seems interesting, and go do it, and really living beyond the confines of what you should and shouldn't do, whether that's based on military tradition or even some of just society's expectations. So real life examples, like Matthew and I went and we took a pottery class, because why would you go take a pottery class? We saw a sign and we walked by it and we decided to try it out. We also have looked into different aerial arts, because why can only circus performers perform in Cirque du Soleil? Okay, well, let's go take an aerial silks class or a lyra class and figure it out for ourselves. And we're going as a couple and not just an individual. And it's really just broadening people's horizons. But seeing that and being able to talk to different people who have all found their ways to some of these more niche activities or sports has really just broadened our thinking and also our networks to see how other people are living. So I think one of the neat experiences that we had recently was going to Tiny Fest in San Diego. Online ad popped up on Facebook or Instagram for people who are living in their vans and living in tiny houses. Well, we went there and we met this entire community of people who are just caravanning around the United States and looking into the concept of tiny living, sustainable living. And we met veterans, we met non-vets, but everybody's kind of connected over how can we make this world work for us instead of working for somebody else.
Wow, I really like that. And sadly, all these veterans are out there, non-veterans, and just people just living life in a way that's not in a structured way. And I think that's awesome, because there's always the notion of, okay, I got to get out of the military. Now I got to find a job or go to school or do all these things that society has structured out for us.
Yeah.
And you're finding that it's not just that. There's so many other things out there, and that's amazing to hear. Shanon, when you were getting out of the military, you said you had a very short amount of time and you had to scramble to figure things out. What was that like for you, and what did you learn about yourself throughout this time that other veterans could kind of relate to?
Yeah. Short story, it was absolutely terrifying. So for context, I had about a 30-day notice from the time that I received the news on my med board that I was being medically separated to find a job and figure out what's next. I was also in Mayport, Florida, and wanted to be an Intel analyst. Well, number one, I thought being an intel analyst meant living the life of James Bond, which it wasn't, and I found out the hard way. And I was the first of my class to really get out of the military, so I didn't know anybody to turn to or how to have a coffee chat or anything like that. So I just sent out resumes and found a job up in DC, packed up all my stuff, moved up there, and realized within the first few months that just the lifestyle isn't what I was looking for. But at the same time, I didn't know what else to do. So I found management consulting, and kind of the beginning of my Google story was going down the Google rabbit hole of what are veteran service organizations, what are different, I think it was like a consulting recruiting event with BCG for women specifically, and just used all of the keywords that I knew people were labeling me to go down a Google search to see what resources were out there, because there is no centralized location for it. A lot of it was trial and error, and also just taking bits and pieces from all of the different organizations that did connect with me to finally craft a career, and just taking it one step at a time. But throughout that entire process was still living very much within the box of, you need to have some sort of a corporate job, you need to have another job lined up before you quit your first one, and adhering to some of those rules, which is why I think at this point in my life with the layoff by Google is, hey, this is a great opportunity. I'm already set up for success financially, and us together to really think outside the box and action this, instead of always just having the pipe dream of being a creative.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that and about your experience and how that felt. And Matthew, I want to bounce the ball over to you over here just because you're part of a med board, and in both corporate and the military world, there's gonna be things like this happening where you either get med boarded out or there could be layoffs, and there's situations where there's adversity. For those people kind of going through a similar situation as you, what do you recommend for them to figure out what's the next steps for them? And how did you figure out what was the next right step for you?
The most important thing that you can do when you know that the transition is up and coming, right? Whether it's a med board, whether it's the career is coming to an end, or a new career opportunity is coming, or you're prepping to move, or you're going to get married, or you're going to have a baby, right? These are all major life transitions. The most important thing for you to do is to sharpen your axe. The analogy I use is there's two lumberjacks, right? One lumberjack starts cutting at the very beginning of the day, and he doesn't stop until the end of the day. And at the end of the day, he's got 100 logs. The second lumberjack starts cutting same time, but he takes a break about halfway through, and then he comes back. But he has 110 logs. And the first lumberjack goes to him and says, how in the world did you, who took a break, produce more than I did? And the second one looks at him and says, what you looked at as me taking a break was me stopping to sharpen my axe so that I was more effective. Take your time, take a pause, and reevaluate where your priorities are, right? If you're getting out of the military and your priority is family, then take some time to go be with your family, right? If you're getting out and you're ready to make bank and money is your priority, great. Then go surround yourself with the wealth that you want to have. But the worst thing you can do is go from Friday, I'm in uniform, to Monday, I'm in a suit, and give yourself no time to do your value exercise, to do your family prioritization, right? Think about it. And anyone who's ever served at some point in their life has said, God, I wish I had more time to spend with those I care about, right? Well, when you leave the service, this is your opportunity to have that time, right? Go visit the people that you haven't seen in years. Go reconnect with the friends that you haven't seen since you graduated, right? Go see your mom. Go see your mom. But when you do that and the world is telling you, no, you can't take a break, you can't take a pause, you've got to just go, go, go. Well, then you're squandering an opportunity to reconnect, and you're going to just put yourself right back into that pressure situation, right? Corporate America and the active duty service are very similar in that once you're in the wheel, you're in. You want to take paid time off, you've got to ask permission for it, just like you have to ask for leave, right? You want to travel, you've got to let people know that you're traveling. You have to ask permission. So in that interim, right, whether it's 10 days, whether it's 3 months, whether it's 6 months or a year, whatever you have to do to recage, confirm what your values are, and then reset your gyro, do it. And exactly like what Shannon was saying, find something you've never done before. Find that off the wall thing that is going to squeeze your creative juice a little bit. It doesn't have to be something that's going to be your forever hobby, right? But it's something that adds to the point of, just like when you joined the military in the first place, it was different, right? It was a challenge. It made you do something that you were uncomfortable with, okay? Shannon took me to a silks class. Silks is where they hang silk lines 40 feet from the ceiling, and you have to figure out how to climb and spin and flip. I was extremely uncomfortable. I was also the only guy there, which, by the way, if you're a single guy, highly encourage you looking into silks. Like, just, anyway, we'll go down that road a different time. But my point is this: it made me super uncomfortable. It made me do something I hadn't done before. But for the whole week after that, I was just rocketing Shannon with these with ideas. Hey, we could go do this. We could make this an element of our business. We should connect with these people, right? Because once you allow the creativity to start, it just keeps coming, right? It flows, and you nurture that. And now, a few months later, after having done that, we are building the next phase of Hop On and Hold On. We're on a podcast and sharing this story, right? So anyway, okay, that's my passion moments.
Very passionate.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear. So it sounds like there was a moment in time where things just kind of clicked for you, and you figured out, well, here's these other things, these other ideas that I thought about because of these uncomfortable situations that I put myself in, and these other people might be thinking, well, what can I do to help figure out what my creative passion is, or besides what a corporate job would look like.
Can I go down this
Oh shit! Oh, I'm gonna give this one to Shannon.
Yeah,
you guys,
of course.
Get ready.
Yeah. Much of this, I think, kind of stemmed from just a lot of our conversations too. And I had that moment a year and a half into my transition out when I connected with the Commit Foundation, and they sat me down, and it's the first organization that I've ever found that makes you do a values exercise. Like, you list out 200 some odd values, you go through it, you whittle it down half, you whittle it down a third until you get to your top 10, your top 5, and then your top 3. That is, to me, kind of the pivotal moment of realizing this doesn't align with anything that I'm doing right now. If I value freedom and I value adventure, well, I'm behind a desk making PowerPoints. That doesn't add up. No wonder I'm not super happy with it. And I think with that catalyst, and you can find values exercises anywhere online, and not just the Commit Foundation, although they are fantastic, to go do it and to really figure that out. Totally understand that not everybody has kind of the flexibility to do it, but the closer you can get to molding your life to look like your values and to really put those first, I think the closer to happiness people can get. And also start to look at what other people are doing. So one of my friends, Kelly Sabraki, she is still in the Navy, but she is also an influencer. She's great on social media, and she went down the path of doing something completely different, but still keeping a career. I surround myself with women like that to be able to say, hey, you were able to do it. What can I learn from you to be able to apply it to my own life to get to the goals that I want to get to? Because if she can have a successful influencer and Navy HR career, well, why can't I also dance and work at Google or something like that, or become, I don't know, the fitness instructor and also an entrepreneur? Not real life examples, but just the being able to do all of these things. The more people that you surround yourself by who are actively doing it and going through the struggles ahead of you, I think the more kind of courage and bravery you have to go down those paths.
Oh, I really like that. It really shows that, you can be multidimensional and not just kind of in this one box of, oh, I'm just a military. I'm just in the military doing this, but you could be a military and influencer. You could do multiple things that you have values for, that have passions for. And diving into this values part, I really want to dive into this too, just because I've been thinking about this for myself, listening a lot about. I'm not sure if the two of you know who Jay Shetty is, but he's really been focusing on a lot about like, what does the value you provide, what is your purpose in life to make you really happy. And for those people that are struggling, that have heard about like figuring out what your values are and taking these assessments, what other ways have you found, like what do you value in life?
This is a plug for any service member who is in that point of conflict, or is leaving the service on maybe terms that they didn't choose. Okay, listen to this. Just because you are not serving a purpose in the military anymore does not mean you do not have a purpose. I know what that feels like. When I came out of the cockpit, I felt like I had lost my identity, right? From the time I was 14 years old, I knew I was going to be a Cobra pilot in the Marine Corps, right? I went to an air show with my grandpa. I held his hand. I looked up at 8 years old at the 3 barrels of a Cobra that was parked on the flight line. I said, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to fly it, right? Fast forward to 27 years old, I had a major accident on a jet ski that eventually led to me coming out of the cockpit, right? I had to redesignate. And for a really long time, it was, I'm not going to do this thing anymore. Well, I'm telling you, when you take the time to step back and take that breath and go through your values exercise like Shanon is talking about, you will rediscover that you still have a purpose, even if it's outside of uniform, right?
Yeah. And it takes time. Like it's not just going to hit you. Going through an exercise is not just going to spit out, hey, this is what I'm supposed to do in life. Sure, it can give you inspiration and give you some keywords to latch onto, but part of it too is, and this is the hard part for a lot of service members coming out, and it was a hard part for me, but to silence the voices of everybody else telling you this is what you're supposed to do. There's no set formula or action plan to get there, but the more that you try, I think the more that it will come to you, and to also just pursue what you naturally like to do. So when I was at Accenture, I got laid in with, I think, running a newsletter or something like that, but I like to write. So I took it on and I had fun with it. When I was in LIMDU in the Navy, I was a public affairs officer. I didn't really want to be one, but I got to write and I got to be creative and take pictures and post it on social media. Cool. That's kind of fun. But then when I went to Google, I was like, I like these things. And I went through this huge struggle of figuring out my identity, trying to figure out the job market, figuring out how to get into Google in the first place. I want to pay it forward for other veterans. And this is coming from someone who I distanced myself from the military for the longest time because I wasn't entirely accepting of my service, which I know a lot of other people go through too. But then once I got to Google, I gravitated towards the veteran community. I gravitated towards creative writing and marketing. And somehow all of those things culminated in an opportunity to first lead marketing and communications for Google's Veteran Employee Resource Group. But then people knew my name there. So when the opportunity came up to fill in the spot for leading veteran hiring initiatives, it fell on my lap. And I didn't go and chase it, but when I was there, it was the happiest I've been in a corporate setting. So it wasn't something that I was chasing the whole time. I was chasing being an intel officer. But then after going through the values and having an idea of, okay, well, these are the things that I like standing up for the underdog, blah, 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 it will eventually come to fruition somehow. And it's not necessarily a great thing to hear of just sit back and wait for it to happen. But everything that you do is leading you towards the next step. And as long as you keep trying to follow your own North Star and trying to just adjust as you go, things will become more and more clear, at least in my opinion so far.
Yeah, I can definitely agree on the learning the skills to figure out like what comes next. I've said this in previous episodes before too, but the reason that I'm in the position I am today is because of all the things that I learned in my previous roles to excel as a product manager as I am today.
Yeah.
And speaking of roles, let's shifting gears here as far as the roles and kind of corporate fellowships and skill bridges. I want to make a pivot here since we're talking about Google and Accenture and things like that. Both of you, I think, are going through or have gone through a Skillbridge program. Can you talk to us a little bit more about your guys' Skillbridge experience and what that was like?
So I'm actively going through Skillbridge right now. The thing that I will tell you for Skillbridge is it's not a guarantee. Okay, commands do not have to approve you to participate in Skillbridge. Skillbridge is an opportunity. When you go through your transition readiness seminar, right? Every service member, regardless of rank, has to go through TRS now. One of the things that they focus on is your interview skills. They dedicate an entire day with follow-up to learning how to interview. My recommendation is you take some of that time and learn how to do an interview to your command. So that way, when you build your Skillbridge packet and you take that packet and you sit across kneecap to kneecap with whosoever it is in your chain of command that's going to do that review first, you have a refined packet that you hand to them to increase your chances of getting it, right? Because you have to sell yourself in order to participate. The other piece that I'll recommend is you need to start as early as possible. If you think you're going to EAS in the next 3 years, now is the time to start looking into Skillbridge, because it takes a long time to get the approval. I started 12 months from my projected EAS. I had an adjustment in my EAS. They actually pushed it up, so it cut it from 12 to 9. And so when I should have been actively participating in my Skillbridge, I was still applying, right? You have got to do it as far out as possible because, for example, on all of Camp Pendleton, there is one guy who does the Skillbridge approval process for the whole base. Okay, just let that sink in for whatever region you're in. Okay. The other piece to that is there are companies that are not associated with the DoD that assist you in finding a Skillbridge that works for you. My program was actually called Hiring Our Heroes. They're a very good program. They connected me with a company that was perfectly in line with my personal values and what I want to do after I've taken this period to sharpen my axe, spend time with my wife, go see my family. And that was absolutely wonderful. My last plug for Skillbridge is there are also companies out there that are acting under false precedents. If at any point you are seeking a Skillbridge company and they tell you that you have to pay to participate, that is
Red flag.
big red flag, right? That is not the case at all. If they ask you for money in any way, shape, or form, it's a red flag. You need to report it immediately. Um, that happened to me. Company attempted to do exactly that. I didn't know any better until I started digging, and I reached out to some of my other contacts, and they were the ones who saved me from going down a very bad track. So I want to pass that to you. If anybody at any point during Skillbridge tells you that you have to give them money to participate, you don't.
Yeah, and I was actually on the other side. I ran Skillbridge for Google, which was very interesting, kind of being here at the same time that Matthew was going through everything to just kind of help peek behind the curtain on the corporate side. Every company works differently. The people that I've seen who have gone through the programs and have made the most of it see it as an opportunity. It's not a guarantee. These companies do not require, or these companies are not required to offer you a job at the end of it. It is kind of a trial run, and it's marketed differently towards the companies as it is towards the service members. However, this is what I would just put a plug in for service members is use this opportunity to further your own career. That is going to look very different for everyone, and there's even creative ways to think outside the box. So one of the founders of Google's Skillbridge program actually worked with a small business when she was running her Etsy shop so she could learn how to run a small business at a brick and mortar. That helped her in one aspect of her career, and that was great at that point. But then she immediately got hired by Google. So then she decided to start the Skillbridge program at Google to pay it forward for other people. Every company operates a little bit differently. Some are more seasoned than others, but everybody is there trying to help the service member. And there's so much out there, but there is not one necessarily copy paste answer for this either, because the application process, the screening process, the interviews, it's different per company and more than likely different per cohort that goes through. Some are individualized, some kind of come in batches. It's really do the research and don't bank on this being something that is a given to you. Like as soon as you take off that uniform, get into the civilian world, you're going to have to hustle. Use this as the kind of the launching pad to figure out exactly how to hustle without having to suffer some of the consequences, such as, hey, I did this wrong, now I don't have a job. No, use this, make the network, learn how to have the coffee chats, learn it in a very safe environment. So when you get out, you have a clearer understanding of what you're getting into and how to get to where you want to be.
I like that last analogy. It's like the safe landing portion you're mentioning. And one thing that Matthew called out a little bit earlier was the interview process of getting approval from your chain of command to even join a Skillbridge program. And I want to dive into that piece a little bit more, just because I think that's a lot of questions that people will have as they are applying to their Skillbridge programs within their units, right? Are there any best practices or anything that the two of you learned during your application to Skillbridge that you would like to share to other people who are thinking, well, what can I do to really prepare my interviewing skills or my packet or just in general, like give them the greatest chance of getting approval to join?
Start early, as early as you can. The reason for that is if you're trying to action Skillbridge, but you're moving at the speed of the military, you're probably not going to get it in the way that most benefits you, right? Because you're getting pulled away from the command, right? The command has to make a decision to say, we are willing to let you go, essentially TAD, your last up to 6 months on your contract, right? If you show up to your CO's office at 6 months and a week and say, I'd like to do Skillbridge, you're probably, not only are you not going to get it, you're not even going to be able to get your application in. So as much lead time as you possibly can. The other piece to that is if you're told no early and then you give it a little time and you take it back and you increase your chances of maybe getting told yes later on, right? Accuracy by volume, right? squeaky hinge gets the grease. All of those little adages that come to the point of, if you let the people who are the decision makers know 2 years in advance, hey, I know what my EAS is. Prior to that, I would like to transition into this type of job. There is a Skillbridge opportunity at this company. Great. You're going to have that conversation 2 years out, and they're going to forget about it. And then 18 months out, you have the conversation again, right? Oh yeah, I remember you and me, we talked about this a long time ago. And then at that year mark, that's when you're making your submissions, right? This is the company I want to participate in. This is actioning all of the items that need to get completed prior to. So you're setting yourself up for success, because at the end of the day, it's just like someone told you the very first time you sat down and you had a fit rep class. No one is going to take as good of your career as you will.
And what Matthew isn't saying is he's really good at building relationships. So a lot of this work is really, can you make friends and can you do it early? Because that is the interview process. That's the interview process to get into Skillbridge, and it's also the interview process to get approved for Skillbridge. A lot of that is the people skills. So get to actually know people, but not for a transactional way. Like anybody that you're talking with at your command, get to know them, like basic leadership principles, but work up and down the chain of command, because as soon as you take that uniform off, your rank does not matter, but it does matter who you are, what you bring to the table, and how good of a human you are, because people can sense that on the other side too. Having been on the interviewer side for a lot of the Skillbridge programs, a lot of the things that we ran into were people assuming that their rank kind of just set them aside from everybody else and put them at an advantage. No, what we're trying to see is, are you a good fit for the company? Are you going to be somebody that we want to work with? All of this is in the interpersonal skills, and taking, kind of eating some of the humble pie when you come to the table and realizing, hey, this is a learning experience, and treating it as such just puts you that much further, even if you're not seeing benefits right away. Like, I guarantee the connections and the networking that you're going to be doing throughout this process will come to fruition at some point, but also not trying to suggest that you go into this to network. You go into this trying to learn. The more you learn, and then the more you can give back as you're going through the process, the easier it's just going to be for you in this transition versus the next, because as I think we all know now, it doesn't stop.
Yeah, that the last point right there too, be a good person. And I think a lot of people overemphasize, oh, what skills do I have? What rank do I have? What all these other things. But at the like you said, at the end of the day, like, are you a good person? Are you going to be a good fit for the company? And not only does it apply, it sounds like, for Skillbridge, but even within the civilian side or being an entrepreneur, I'm sure, like, you have to build those relationships. And kind of shifting gears here a little bit, when we're talking about this within your entrepreneurship journey, like, what kind of challenges have you faced that have helped you, or like helped you in your career, helped you in your entrepreneurship journey, or challenges you've had to overcome together as a couple?
Yeah, I think one of the key challenges that I think everybody faces, regardless of what their background is communication. Because in setting up your own company, you're not just communicating with one another if you're doing this with your husband, because we live and breathe everything that's happening, but also like identifying who your audience is and how do you communicate to them and how do you reach them in a manner that they're going to understand. We can't assume we know everything about the other side, but it's so much trial and error, but continuously improving on it as well.
Part of taking the time to sharpen your axe as an entrepreneur is knowing who you are selling your product to, right? When we very first started, when I brought Shanon in and I said, hey, I want to do this thing, bless her very patient heart, I was all over the place, right? I wanted to do this, and I wanted to do this, and I wanted to work with these guys, and I wanted to make this thing and this thing and this thing, right? And I'd have 10 ideas written on scratch paper by the end of the day. What she's talking about with communication is taking that and focusing, right? Focusing on who who you're trying to serve and making sure that the way that you are going to serve them is a way that they can receive it, right? Just because we put the information out there in the way that we think is good absolutely does not mean that who we are trying to communicate to are receiving it and understanding it.
Yeah, we've had so many conversations just in basically building the foundation for our relationship that's like, Matthew, is this what you mean or is this what you mean? Can you please clarify what exactly you're talking about? And credit to him, he's the most patient person ever to just help me get to understanding exactly what's going on in his brain. And I think the conversations we've had does set this apart because we're taking the time to understand the meaning behind the words, because words carry weight, but it matters more what the other person or the other side is taking in than it is necessarily what you are giving out. I would say that's both a challenge and success now, because like this has been fairly fast for us and everything's happening all at the same time, but keeping those open line of communication and really taking the time to understand what's going on instead of just actioning it has gotten us to a point where we can start a business together, where we can show up as a pair instead of just two people with fairly similar pasts who are just talking about all of the different things without having just one clear joint communication.
For those who want to go down this entrepreneurial path and are thinking about getting started, what other things would you recommend that they think about to really set themselves up for success?
Go do something that you've never done before. It doesn't have to do with your business. It doesn't have to do with your past career. It doesn't have to do with what you think your future career is going to be. Go do something that makes you a little uncomfortable, that makes you be in a way that's not what you regularly are. I don't care what it is. You want to go do silks? You want to go skydiving? You want to come try cowboy action shooting with me? You want to go deep sea fishing? You want to walk into the woods and build a cabin with nothing more than a pocket knife and 100 yards of 550 cord? I don't care. The point is if you are about to give your life to this business, because if you're going to be an entrepreneur, that's what it's going to take. You have to eat, breathe, and sleep getting your business up and running. I promise that will happen. But before you do that, go give some time to all of the things that you haven't had the opportunity to for the last 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, if you're a career Marine, right? Because once you start, it owns you. Yeah. Which is great. If you love it, if you love what you're doing, it's awesome, right? But take just that little bit of time, however long you need, to recage your gyro, find those values, and then put them in your crosshair.
Yeah, and build the foundation. Focus more on the foundation than everything else that's going to come with it. For us, that's making sure that we work well together because we're in this together. But for solopreneurs who are doing it themselves, find yourself, because then you're going to be kind of doing this alone and depending on the help of whatever your support network is to get you up and running. And I think especially for veterans out there and military spouses, like one of the very underrated skills that every single person who's coming from this community has is their resourcefulness, because we are all so used to finding the red tape and finding our way around the red tape that the biggest shock to the system is realizing that as soon as you go into entrepreneurship, there's no red tape. So how do you just allow yourself to expand your mind in a way that's like, I can literally do anything. I just have to pick a path and I might fail, and that's totally okay, because everybody is also so used to bouncing back. The biggest thing, and I think the kind of cliff that I teeter on before really just diving into everything is getting started, is taking the first step and just putting in my bio, I am an entrepreneur, and then owning it and then running with it. But everything leading up to that step, it is absolutely terrifying. But then just jump off the deep end because I guarantee, even if your first business fail, even if your 10th business fails, you're going to have something to lean on, and you're also going to learn a lot of lessons, and you can do so much with that. So don't be afraid to fail, because what if you fly?
Definitely, yeah. Don't be afraid to fail is a very, very, very great last point there. A lot of people in general are scared to fail, right? And that's what stops them from starting in the first place. So dive in the deep end, hop on and hold on, right?
Exactly.
Any final words that you like? Any final words that you'd like to leave the audience with, guys?
You go ahead. I'll finish.
I was just going to say, hop on and hold on, because life is a whirlwind and it's not going to stop. We've taken that on as our life motto, and we've now it's seeped into the rest of our extended family, where things are going to happen. It's okay. Hop on, hold on, enjoy the ride, and just go with the flow and see where life takes you.
Yes, 100%. Once it starts taking over, there's no way that it can't seep out into everyone around you, right? Our families know, our parents know that it's just one hop on and hold on adventure after the other. My encouragement to anyone who gleans anything from this is, please reach out to us. It's super easy. Hop on and hold on at gmail.com. At hop on and hold on is our Instagram, right? If you have an idea and everybody else has kicked it down and said, this is stupid, it's never going to work, I want to hear your story. I want to hear it, right? Especially if you are a couple that's doing this, right? We have found it very, very challenging for us to find other couples, right? And I'm talking married couple, not just business partner, but like a married couple who said, you know what? We are foregoing all of the corporate stuff. Now we're joining our lives and our business. I'd love to hear about that. And then absolute last plug, and I said this earlier and I'm going to reiterate it. Your identity is not defined by what you did when you were in uniform, right? It's the everyday, starting right now, the show up, the be a good person, the let your moral compass guide you, and that is how you will continue to build your reputation. And that reputation, I promise, will take you farther than any resume will.
And we also just want to collectively thank you for the opportunity for telling our story, because I think for us, the more we tell our story, the more people are reaching out and being like, hey, how do we do this? But we've noticed that it's the veteran and it's the military spouse community first that will be your biggest supporters. But if you don't speak up about what's going on, nobody is going to know how to help you or what they can do. So, Tak, if there's anything that we can do to help you out in your career journey, please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know.
Absolutely. You guys took the words and the questions right out of our mouth. I will leave everything to follow up and reach out to you guys in the show notes. But thank you so much, Matthew and Shannon, for the amazing content and amazing resources that you shared today.
Tak, thank you, man.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this valuable, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and now YouTube. Also, please consider leaving a review and let me know what you think. All the links we talked about will be on the show notes, or you can go to tapinwithtako.buzzsprout.com. Talk to y'all next time. Peace.